London. So Harry has landed himself in a real mess, hasn't he? This situation with the British tabloids has completely spun out of control. The Duke of Sussex has gone all in on this mission to make the press answer for their actions, especially Associated Newspapers Limited, the company behind the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday. He has accused them of illegally obtaining private information about him, but now the entire case appears to be unraveling in real time. And here's the shocking part. Crucial members of his legal team have walked away and resigned. That is not a small hiccup. That is the equivalent of losing your franchise quarterback halfway through the championship game. People close to the case are saying this wasn't a simple reshuffling of lawyers. It was a calculated withdrawal. They knew where this was heading. A classic abandoned ship scenario. The real turning point seems to have come once the trial actually began. Harry arrived with sweeping claims, alleging illegal behavior, secret plots, and systemic wrongdoing. But once the defense responded, things took a sharp turn. They didn't just push back, they went straight at him personally. That is when the situation began to spiral. Harry has accused two royal correspondents, Rebecca English from the Daily Mail and Katie Nicholl, spelled Nicholl, of engaging in criminal acts. Criminal conduct, simply for investigating him and those around him. But Associated Newspapers came back hard with a completely different version of events. Their argument is that Harry was not an innocent target of unethical journalism. Instead, they say he actively participated in the media ecosystem and benefited from it when it suited him. They focused heavily on the claims involving Katie Nicholl. She previously served as the diary editor for the Mail on Sunday and is a familiar face on television. According to the defense, she was not secretly spying on Harry at all. They say she was personally invited by Harry himself to attend a private party at Kensington Roof Gardens in 2011. Not only that, but they allegedly stayed in contact afterward and moved within overlapping social circles. That hardly sounds like a covert criminal operation. It paints a very different picture. Then came the moment that really landed. According to the defense, Nicholl's response to Harry's accusations was direct and unapologetic. Her position was essentially this: "No, Harry, you invited me to your party." That single statement carries real weight. It undercuts his entire portrayal of himself as a victim. Instead, it makes it appear as though he is targeting someone he actually knew and socialized with. At the very least, it points to a complicated relationship rather than a clear example of criminal harassment. The allegations against Rebecca English followed a similar pattern. Harry's lead barrister, David Sherburne, attempted to introduce an email from 2010. The email showed English allegedly seeking flight details for Harry's then-girlfriend, Chelsea Davy, spelled ChelsyDavy, from a private jet company. Sherburne argued that this demonstrated unlawful information-gathering methods. But once again, the defense dismantled that claim, arguing the email proved nothing illegal. They emphasized English's long-standing career as a respected journalist and noted her legitimate professional access during Harry's time as a working royal. Taken together, the impact of all this testimony has been deeply damaging for Harry. It humanizes the journalists involved, presenting them as professionals doing their jobs, while casting Harry as someone driven by a personal vendetta. It blurs the distinction between standard journalistic practices and genuine criminal misconduct. Watching him in court, the strain is obvious. He appears tense, worn down, visibly aged. The irony is hard to ignore. The man who spent years condemning media intrusion is now sitting in a courtroom under intense global scrutiny, attempting to dismantle the careers of journalists. The departure of his legal team is especially telling. It signals a collapse of confidence. One legal analyst noted that when solicitors withdraw like this, it is usually because they believe their client's position is no longer defensible or the evidence has disintegrated. They are not stepping away from the law itself. They are stepping away from Harry's account of events. It is harsh, but it is the reality. For Harry, this is nothing short of catastrophic. This lawsuit was meant to be the foundation of his and Meghan's campaign against the British media. They framed it as a moral struggle, a battle between right and wrong. If it fails, it is not just a courtroom loss. It is a symbolic defeat of enormous proportions. It damages his credibility and reinforces the image of someone who cannot tolerate scrutiny. And then there is the financial risk. Losing could leave him responsible for massive legal costs. Worse still, it could permanently lock in a public perception of him as endlessly combative and unable to distinguish between fair criticism and genuine malice. It makes him appear thin-skinned, unable to handle pressure. Meanwhile, the journalists he accused are emerging in a far more sympathetic light. They are not the shadowy villains he described. They are experienced professionals defending their integrity. Katie Nicholl, who recently overcame cancer, and Rebecca English, who has covered the royal family for years, are pushing back forcefully. They argue that Harry is distorting the past to suit his narrative. As a result, the trial has evolved. It is no longer just about what may or may not have happened a decade ago. It has become a judgment on Harry's decision-making, his honesty, and whether this entire case is rooted in personal grievance. The fact that his legal team has stepped away is the clearest indicator yet that the case is slipping through his fingers. The image of him sitting in court is striking. He looks unhappy, diminished, like a child swallowed by an oversized suit. This was meant to be his defining moment, his reckoning with the tabloids. Instead, it has turned into a very public unraveling. And where is Meghan in all of this? She is thousands of miles away in Montecito. There has been no public show of support, no appearances at court, no visible solidarity, nothing. For a couple who built their public identity around the idea of standing together against the world, her absence speaks volumes. He uprooted his family to protect them, and now he stands alone, confronting the consequences. People close to the situation say the mood surrounding Harry is bleak and heavy. The resignation of his lawyers was not just tactical. It was a declaration of no confidence. They are effectively signaling that this case cannot be won. That leaves Harry vulnerable, both legally and emotionally. His discomfort in court goes beyond difficult questioning. He is watching the collapse of the identity he built around being a wronged victim. The testimony has been relentless. It challenges his claim of total persecution. Accounts of him inviting Katie Nicholl to social events and maintaining friendly contact suggest a far more nuanced reality. It implies he engaged with the media world and benefited from it when convenient. Having your past reframed so publicly must be deeply unsettling. He is not just battling a newspaper. He is confronting a version of his own history, and it is not going his way. This entire episode exposes a glaring contradiction in Harry's life after leaving royal duties. He and Meghan constructed a massive business empire around their personal story through books, documentaries, and podcasts. Yet when the most critical legal chapter of that story is unfolding, he is on his own. Meghan's absence feels deliberate. She appears to be distancing herself from the fallout. While she has faced her own media struggles, she seems to have decided that this is Harry's fight to carry and possibly to lose. The emotional weight shows on him. His posture, his vacant stare, the absence of the defiance he once displayed. He looks deeply unhappy. He is stuck between the world he was born into, which he claims pushed him away, and the world he created, which now appears absent. The California dream feels very far away. At its core, Harry's visible distress reflects a larger strategic failure. He attempted to apply the rules of royal media battles, where statements and sympathetic outlets can shape perception, to a courtroom. But courts do not operate on narratives. They operate on evidence, cross-examination, and verifiable facts. Meghan, the architect of their media approach, is absent because there is no narrative left to manage. Only a failing case remains. The judge, the press benches, and the empty seat where Meghan might have sat all combined to intensify the pressure. Harry wanted to be seen as a fighter for justice. Instead, he resembles an isolated soldier. His allies are gone. His carefully constructed refuge has proven to be solitary in the truest sense. His suffering is not merely personal. It is the consequence of mistaking visibility for influence and confession for authority. In a courtroom, neither carries weight. So what does all of this actually mean? Strip away the legal terminology and royal spectacle. This situation is a textbook example of how not to manage a public crisis and how not to exist as a modern public figure. Harry is approaching this as though public sympathy is automatic, as though crying privacy violations should instantly guarantee support. That world no longer exists. Audiences are more discerning. They recognize contradictions. especially when the person making the complaint has earned millions by sharing intimate details on streaming platforms. The irony is overwhelming. He is suing newspapers for invading his privacy while selling his personal life to the highest bidder. It is impossible to reconcile the two, and Meghan's absence only reinforces the perception that something is fractured. They marketed themselves as inseparable, yet when the stakes are highest, she is nowhere to be seen. It does not project unity. It suggests calculation. Harry has lost control of the story. He has lost public goodwill. Cornered, he is now striking out indiscriminately. It comes across as resentment and entitlement rather than principle. The departure of his lawyers compounds the damage. It is not only a legal failure but a public relations catastrophe. It tells the world that even his own representatives no longer believe in his version of events. None of this is to suggest the tabloids are innocent. They have a long history of aggressive behavior. But Harry's strategy has backfired completely. He is not reforming the system. He is not inspiring change. He is undermining himself. And the tragedy is that none of this was necessary. He could have disengaged. He could have focused on philanthropy. He could have lived quietly. Instead, he chose conflict. Now he faces the consequences. It is a cautionary tale about fame, wealth, and obsession. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to walk away. Harry seems incapable of doing that. He is determined to prove himself right, even if it costs him everything. At this stage, sympathy is hard to muster. He created the situation, and now he must endure it. Alone, in a wood-paneled London courtroom, under the gaze of the world, watching his narrative collapse. The entire saga feels like a self-inflicted implosion, and there is no clear path out.